The rain-slicked alley behind La Belle Etoile reeked of rotting food and desperation. Marcus Vail, Chicago's golden boy, a tech millionaire with a smile that could charm a snake, loomed over the trembling figure of Amara Jones, his fiancée. Her emerald gown, once the envy of every guest at the gala inside, clung to her skin, soaked from the downpour. Her voice cracked as she begged, "Marcus, please. You don't understand. Understand." His voice was a blade, slicing through the patter of rain. "You think I'm blind, Amara. You think I don't see what you've done." The crowd at the alley's mouth grew thicker, phones raised like vultures circling a kill. Among them, unnoticed, stood a girl small, maybe 10, her braided hair fraying under a soaked hoodie. Her name was Lila Carter, and her brown eyes, wide with fear, locked onto something no one else saw, a tiny red light blinking in the shadows, high on the alley wall. "A camera. There's a camera," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. No one heard her. No one ever did. Lila was invisible in this world of wealth and power, a foster kid who'd slipped into the gala's kitchen to scavenge leftovers. But that camerate saw everything, and what it held would unravel Marcus Vail's perfect life. Marcus's hand shot out, grabbing Amara's wrist. She flinched, her heels scraping the pavement as she stumbled back. "You lied to me," he hissed. "You and that janitor." His eyes flicked to the man cowering nearby, a lanky figure in a worn jacket, his dark skin glistening under the streetlight. Jamal Harris, the restaurant's night cleaner, raised his hands, his voice shaking. "Mr. Vail, I swear, it's not what you think. Not what I think." Marcus's laugh was bitter, venomous. "I saw you two, sneaking around, whispering. You think I'm some fool." The accusation hung heavy, laced with something uglier. The crowd murmured, their whispers sharp with judgment. "She's cheating with the help," one woman muttered, her pearls gleaming. "Typical," another scoffed, her eyes narrowing at Jamal. The air pulsed with prejudice, the kind that festers in shadows, unspoken but suffocating. Lila's small hands tightened around her backpack straps. She'd seen this before, people like Marcus, wielding their power like a club, assuming the worst of people like Jamal, like her. Her heart raced. She wanted to shout about the camera, to tell them it was watching, but her voice caught in her throat. Who would listen to a kid like her? Amara's voice broke through, raw and desperate. "Marcus, I was helping him. That's all. His daughter's sick. She needs his daughter." Marcus sneered, stepping closer. "You expect me to believe that? You've been lying to me for months." The crowd gasped, feeding on the drama. Lila's eyes darted back to the camera. That red light, it was still blinking, recording every word, every gesture. She didn't know who'd put it there or why, but she knew it held the truth. And the truth was dangerous. Jamal stepped forward, his hand still raised. "Mr. Vail, I ain't nobody. I clean floors. I don't want trouble." Amara was just. "Shut up." Marcus snapped, his voice echoing off the brick walls. "You don't get to talk." The words landed like a slap. Lila flinched, her own memories stirring foster homes where she'd been told to stay quiet, stay small. She glanced at Amara, whose face was a mask of pain, and then at Jamal, whose shoulders slumped under the weight of Marcus's disdain. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, their assumptions hardening into fact. Lila's whisper came again, louder this time. "There's a camera." Still, no one noticed. But the camera did. It saw Marcus's rage, Amara's tears, Jamal's fear. It saw the crowd's eagerness to condemn. And it saw Lila, the girl no one else did, stepping closer to the dumpster, her small frame trembling but resolute. She didn't know it yet, but that camera's footage would spark a firestorm. It would expose lies, shatter lives, and force a city to confront its ugliest truths. For now, though, Lila stood alone, her heart pounding as she watched Marcus's world begin to crack. The alley's tension coiled tighter, a spring ready to snap. Marcus's grip on Amara's wrist loosened, but his eyes burned with betrayal. "You think you can play me?" he said, his voice low. "Dangerous. I gave you everything, Amara. Everything." Amara yanked her arm free, her face a storm of defiance and despair. "I never asked for your money, Marcus. I asked for your trust." Her words trembled, but they carried a weight that silenced the crowd for a moment. Even the rain seemed to pause, as if the city itself were listening. Lila, still clutching her backpack, inched closer to the dumpster. The camera's red light blinked steadily, a silent witness to the chaos. She didn't know why it was there, maybe security, maybe something shadier, but she knew it mattered. Her eyes flicked to Jamal, who stood frozen, his hand still raised like a man facing a firing squad. The crowd's whispers grew uglier, their assumptions about him laced with venom. "He's probably got a record," one man muttered. "They always do," a woman replied, her lips curling. Lila's stomach churned. She'd heard those words before, felt their sting. She was just a kid, but she knew what it meant to be judged by the color of your skin, to be invisible until someone needed a scapegoat. She wanted to scream, to tell them they were wrong, but fear kept her silent. For now, Amara turned to the crowd, her voice rising. "You don't know him. You don't know me. Jamal's daughter is dying, and I was trying to help. That's all this is." Marcus laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Helping. Sneaking around behind my back, meeting him in secret. You think I'm that stupid?" The crowd murmured agreement, their phones still recording, their faces hungry for more. Lila's eyes darted to the camera again. It was high up, tucked near a rusted fire escape, almost hidden. She wondered if anyone else had noticed it. Probably not, they were too busy feeding on the spectacle. Jamal's voice broke through, quiet but firm. "My girl, Tasha, she's got leukemia. Amara was helping me find a doctor, someone who'd take my insurance. That's it. I ain't no thief, and I ain't no liar." Marcus spun on him, his face a mask of contempt. "Then why the secrets? Why the late-night calls? I saw the texts. Amara. Don't lie to me." Amara's eyes widened, her breath catching. "You went through my phone. You gave me no choice." Marcus roared. The crowd leaned in, their whispers a low hum of excitement. Lila's heart raced. She could feel the truth slipping away, drowned out by Marcus's anger and the crowd's eagerness to believe the worst. She took a step forward, her small voice barely cutting through the noise. "There's a camera." This time, a few heads turned, but their eyes dismissed Hera Kid, a nobody. She clenched her fists, frustration bubbling up. She wasn't invisible. Not tonight. Amara's voice softened, pleading now. "Marcus, I was trying to protect you. You're so busy, always in meetings, always traveling. I didn't want to burden you with this." "Burden me?" Marcus's voice cracked, and for a moment, something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. "You're my fiancée, Amara. You're supposed to tell me everything." The crowd's murmurs shifted, some softening, others hardening. "She's lying," a man muttered. "She's just covering for him," a woman hissed. Lila's chest tightened. She could see the truth in Amara's eyes, in Jamal's trembling hands. But no one else wanted to. Then, a new voice cut through the rain, a sharp, authoritative bark. What's going on here? A security guard, broad-shouldered and stern, pushed through the crowd, his flashlight sweeping the alley. The beam caught Lila for a moment, and she froze, her heart pounding. She didn't trust uniforms. They always meant trouble. Marcus straightened, his charm snapping back into place like a mask. Just a misunderstanding. Officer. My fiancée and I were discussing something private. The guard's eyes narrowed, flicking to Jamal. Then Amara. Doesn't look private to me. You okay, ma'am? Amara nodded, but her eyes were glassy, her hands shaking. I'm fine, she whispered, though no one believed her. Lila's gaze darted back to the camera. The red light was still blinking, unyielding. She didn't know how to get to it, didn't know what it held, but she knew it was the key. The truth was up there, waiting to be seen. And she wasn't going to let it stay hidden. The security guard's flashlight lingered on Jamal, his gaze heavy with suspicion. You. Step back, he ordered, his tone clipped. Jamal obeyed, his hands still raised, his eyes downcast. The crowd's whispers grew louder, their assumptions hardening into truth. Lila's small frame trembled, her fists clenched so tight her nails dug into her palms. She hated this, the way people looked at Jamal, at her, like they were less than human. There's a camera, she shouted, her voice cracking but fierce. This time, a few more heads turned. The guard's flashlight swung toward her, pinning her in its glare. What did you say, kid? He asked, his tone more annoyed than curious. Lila pointed to the wall, her arm shaking. Up there. It's recording everything. The crowd stirred, their phones lowering slightly as they craned their necks. Marcus's eyes narrowed, his charm faltering for a split second. What camera? He snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. Amara's head whipped around, her tear-streaked face catching the light. Lila, what are you talking about? Lila's heart pounded. She didn't know Amara. Not really, just a kind woman who'd slipped her a plate of food in the kitchen earlier, who'd smiled when no one else did. But she trusted her. And she trusted that camera. It's there, she insisted, pointing again. It saw everything. The guard stepped toward the wall, his flashlight sweeping upward. The red light blinked, steady and unyielding, tucked beside the fire escape. The crowd's murmurs shifted, curiosity replacing judgment for a moment. She's right, a woman said, squinting. There's something up there. Marcus's face darkened. This is ridiculous. Some kid's making things up, and you're all buying it. But the guard wasn't listening. He climbed onto the dumpster, his boots clanging against the metal, and reached for the camera. The crowd held its breath. Lila's pulse raced. She didn't know what the footage would show, but she knew it would change everything. Amara stepped toward Marcus, her voice low but steady. If there's a camera, let's see it. If you're so sure I'm lying, what are you afraid of? Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The guard yanked the camera free, a small black device no bigger than a pack of cards. He turned it over, frowning. It's live, he said. Streaming somewhere. Streaming. Jamal's voice was barely a whisper, his eyes wide with fear. To who? The guard shrugged. No idea. But it's got a memory card. We can check it. The crowd pressed closer, their phones now aimed at the guard. Lila stayed rooted, her eyes locked on the camera. She didn't know how it worked, didn't know who was watching, But she felt a spark of hope. Maybe the truth wasn't invisible after all. Marcus's voice cut through, smooth but strained. This is a waste of time. Amara, we're leaving. Now. Amara didn't move. No. Marcus. If there's footage, I want to see it. I want everyone to see it. The crowd erupted in whispers, some siding with Amara, others with Marcus. The guard tucked the camera under his arm and gestured toward the restaurant. Let's take this inside. Manager's got a laptop we can use. As the crowd shuffled toward the restaurant's back door, Lila hung back, her heart still racing. She didn't trust crowds, didn't trust anyone, really. But she followed, her small frame slipping through the throng, unnoticed as always. The rain had stopped, leaving the alley slick and gleaming under the streetlights. The wooden plank by the dumpster, with its bold yellow text, "Truth sees all," seemed to glow in the dim light. A silent promise. Inside, the restaurant's kitchen was a stark contrast to the alley bright. Sterile, the air thick with the scent of roasted garlic and fresh bread. The manager, a wiry man with a nervous tic, set up a laptop on a steel counter. The crowd gathered around, their faces a mix of anticipation and skepticism. Lila squeezed through, standing on her tiptoes to see. The guard plugged in the camera's memory card, and a grainy video flickered to life. The alley appeared on the screen, the angle wide, capturing everything: the dumpster, the fire escape, the neon sign. And there, in the center, were Amara and Jamal, their voices faint but clear. "I found a clinic," Amara was saying, her voice urgent. "They'll take your insurance. Jamal. Tasha can start treatment next week." Jamal's voice trembled. "I don't know how to thank you. I was losing hope." The crowd went silent, their assumptions crumbling. Lila's eyes stung with tears. She'd been right. The camera had seen the truth. But what came next would shake them all. The laptop screen glowed in the dimly lit kitchen, the grainy footage casting long shadows across the stainless steel counters. Amara's voice echoed from the speakers, steady and compassionate. "I'll cover the first appointment. Jamal. Don't worry about the cost." Jamal's head bowed, his hands clasped tightly. "You don't have to do that, Miss Amara. I'll find a way." "You're not alone in this," she replied, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "Tasha needs you strong, not stressed." The video cut off abruptly, the screen going black. The silence in the kitchen was deafening, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, their earlier judgments now heavy in the air. Lila stood frozen, her small hands gripping the edge of a counter, her heart swelling with vindication. She'd known Amara was telling the truth. Marcus's face was a mask of stone, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might crack. "This doesn't prove anything," he said, his voice low but sharp. "You were still sneaking around, Amara, hiding things from me." Amara's eyes flashed with defiance. "I was helping a friend, Marcus. Something you'd known nothing about." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others still skeptical. The guard crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "There's more footage," he said, clicking through the memory card's files. This was just the last clip. Lila's pulse quickened. More footage. What else had the camera seen? She glanced at Marcus, whose composure was fraying, his hands twitching at his sides. He caught her eye for a split second, and something in his gaze cold, calculating made her stomach twist. The next clip loaded, the timestamp showing a week earlier. The alley was darker, the neon sign flickering. Two figures stood near the dumpster, Their voices hushed but clear. One was Jamal, his work apron stained with grease. The other was a man Lila didn't recognize, tall, broad-shouldered, his face obscured by a hoodie. "You got the money?" the stranger asked, his voice gruff. Jamal's hands shook as he pulled an envelope from his pocket. "It's all I could scrape together. Please, tell him it's enough." The stranger snatched the envelope, glancing inside. "This ain't half of what he's owed. You're playing a dangerous game, Harris." The crowd gasped, their whispers reigniting. "What's he into?" A woman muttered. "Drugs. Gambling." Another hissed. Lila's heart sank. They were doing it again, jumping to the worst conclusions, painting Jamal as a villain. Amara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "Stop it. You don't know what you're talking about." But Marcus seized the moment, his voice dripping with triumph. "See, I knew it. You're covering for a criminal, Amara. And you dragged me into this mess." Jamal's face crumpled, his hands raised in surrender. "It ain't like that. I owe money for Tasha's treatments. I got behind on bills. And save it," Marcus snapped, turning to the crowd. "You all saw it. He's trouble. And she's in on it." Lila's voice burst out before she could stop it. "You're wrong." Every head turned, and she froze, her small frame trembling under their stares. But she couldn't stay silent anymore. "You didn't watch the whole thing. You're twisting it." The guard raised an eyebrow, his finger hovering over the laptop. "Kid's got a point. There's more." The next clip played, and the truth began to unravel. The stranger in the hoodie wasn't a dealer or a loan shark, was a hospital administrator, pressuring Jamal for unpaid medical bills. "You miss another payment, and Tasha's off the treatment list," he said coldly. "You think we run a charity?" Jamal's voice broke. "I'm trying. I work 2 jobs. Please, just give me more time." The clip ended, and the kitchen fell silent again. Amara's eyes filled with tears, her voice barely a whisper. "That's why I was helping him, Marcus. Because no one else would." Marcus's face twitched, his confidence cracking. The crowd's murmurs softened, some faces flushed with shame. But Lila saw something else in Marcus's eyes: panic. He wasn't just angry. He was scared. The guard clicked another file, and the screen lit up with a new scene. This time, it wasn't Jamal or Amara. It was Marcus, standing in the same alley, weeks earlier, speaking to a man in a suit. The audio was faint, but the words were clear. "Make sure it stays quiet. I don't care how much it costs." The crowd gasped, their phones raised again, capturing every second. Lila's breath caught. What was Marcus hiding? And what did it have to do with that camera? The kitchen's air grew thick, the crowd's eyes glued to the laptop as Marcus's voice echoed through the speakers. "Make sure it stays quiet," he repeated, his tone clipped. "Urgent." The man in the suit nodded, slipping an envelope into his pocket before vanishing into the alley's shadows. The footage cut off, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Lila's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. She didn't know what Marcus was hiding, but she knew it was bigger than Amara, bigger than Jamal. The camera had caught something he didn't want seen, and now the whole world was watching. Marcus laughed, but it was forced, brittle. "This is absurd. You're all blowing this out of proportion. That was just business." "Business?" Amara's voice was sharp, her eyes narrowing. "What kind of business happens in an alley at midnight, Marcus?" The crowd murmured, their skepticism turning on him. Phones were still recording, their lenses now aimed at Marcus's sweating face. The guard crossed his arms, his expression hard. "You want to explain this one, Mr. Vale?" Marcus's charm faltered, his hands fidgeting. "It's nothing. Just a deal. Nothing illegal." Lila stepped forward, her small voice cutting through the tension. "Then why'd you tell him to keep it quiet?" Every head turned. Marcus's eyes locked onto her, and for a moment, she saw something raw fear, maybe even desperation. "Who are you, kid?" he snapped. "Why are you even here?" "She's the one who saw the camera," Amara said, stepping protectively in front of Lila. "And she's right." "What are you hiding, Marcus?" The guard clicked another file, ignoring Marcus's protests. The screen flickered, showing the same alley, weeks earlier. Marcus again, this time alone, pacing under the neon sign. His phone was pressed to his ear, his voice low but audible. "I don't care what it takes. Bury the story. No one can know about the layoffs." The crowd gasped, their whispers erupting into a low roar. "Layoffs?" a man muttered. "He's Vale Tech's CEO. What's he hiding?" Lila didn't know much about business, but she knew what layoffs meant. People like Jamal, people like her foster parents, losing their jobs, their homes. She glanced at Amara, whose face was pale, her hands trembling. "You knew about this?" Amara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus's jaw tightened. "You don't understand, Amara. It's complicated. The company's in trouble. Trouble." She snapped, stepping closer. "You're firing hundreds of people, and you didn't tell me. You let me think you were some hero, building a better future." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, their phones capturing every word. Lila's eyes darted to Jamal, who stood silently, his face a mask of exhaustion. He'd been working 2 jobs, fighting to save his daughter, while Marcus hid secrets that could ruin lives. The guard played another clip. This time, it was Marcus and the same suited man, standing by the dumpster. "The camera's in place," the man said. "It'll catch anyone poking around. You'll know who's leaking." Marcus nodded, his voice cold. "Good. I want names. Anyone who talks gets crushed." The kitchen erupted. He set up the camera. A woman gasped. He was spying on his own people. Lila's mind raced. The camera wasn't random. Marcus had planted it, hoping to catch whistleblowers, people who might expose his company's collapse. But it had caught him instead: his lies, his deals, his betrayal. Amara's voice shook with fury. "You were watching us. You thought I was the leak." Marcus's face crumpled, his charm gone. "I had to protect the company, Amara. You don't get it. If this got out, the stock would tank. Everything I built, everything you built." Jamal's voice was quiet but searing. "You built it on our backs. People like me, working for pennies, while you hide your failures." The crowd's anger turned on Marcus, their voices rising. Lila felt a surge of pride. She'd been the one to point out the camera, to spark this unraveling. But she also felt fear. Marcus was powerful, and powerful people didn't go down quietly. The guard shut the laptop, his expression grim. "I'm calling the cops. This needs to be sorted out." Marcus's eyes widened, panic setting in. "You can't do this. I'm Marcus Vale. I own half this city." But the crowd wasn't listening. They were done with his lies, his charm, his power. Lila looked at Amara, who stood tall despite her tears, and at Jamal, whose shoulders were straighter now, as if a weight had lifted. The truth was out, and it was heavy, but it was free. The kitchen felt smaller now, the air thick with the weight of exposed secrets. Marcus's voice rose, desperate, as he turned to the crowd. You're all making a mistake. You don't know the whole story. But the crowd was done with him. Their phones, still recording, captured his unraveling Chicago's golden boy, reduced to a man scrambling for excuses. Lila stood near the counter, her small frame barely noticeable, but her eyes burned with determination. She'd started this, and she wasn't backing down. Amara's voice cut through, sharp and unwavering. The whole story. You spied on your own employees. Marcus. You had layoffs that'll destroy families. And you accused Jamal of what? Stealing. Cheating. Because he's black. The crowd's murmurs spiked, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. The word race hung in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Lila knew that feeling the sting of being judged before you even spoke. She saw it in Jamal's tired eyes, in the way he stood apart, like he was bracing for the next blow. Marcus's hands shot up, defensive. That's not what this is about. I was protecting the company. Protecting yourself, Jamal said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the room. You didn't care who got hurt, long as your name stayed clean. The guard, still holding the camera, stepped forward. Cops are on their way. This footage is evidence now. Marcus's face paled, his eyes darting to the door. For a moment, it looked like he might run, but the crowd closed in, their phones a wall of judgment. Lila's heart raced. She'd never seen someone so powerful look so small. Amara turned to Jamal, her voice soft but firm. I'm sorry. I didn't know it would come to this. Jamal shook his head, his expression weary but grateful. You tried to help Tasha. That's more than most. Lila's eyes stung. She thought of her own life, foster homes, empty promises, people who looked through her like she was glass. Amara was different. Jamal was different. They were fighting for something real, something worth it. The manager, who'd been silent until now, cleared his throat. Everyone, out. This is a crime scene now. The crowd grumbled but began to disperse, their phones still buzzing with recordings that would hit the internet within hours. Lila hung back, her small hands clutching her backpack. She didn't want to leave, not yet. The truth was out, but it wasn't enough. Not for her. As the crowd thinned, Amara knelt in front of her, her eyes soft. You were brave, Lila. You changed everything. Lila's throat tightened. No one had ever called her brave before. I saw the camera, she mumbled. Amara smiled, a sad but genuine smile. You saw more than that. You saw the truth. The sound of sirens pierced the night, growing closer. Marcus stood alone now, his shoulders slumped, his empire crumbling with every second. The guard handed the camera to a police officer who'd just arrived, a stern woman with a notepad. We'll need statements, she said, her eyes scanning the room. Lila's stomach twisted. She didn't trust cops, didn't trust anyone in a uniform. But Amara's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, grounding her. It's okay, Amara whispered. You're not alone. The officer approached Jamal first, her tone professional but kind. Mr. Harris, can you tell me what happened here? Jamal's voice was steady as he recounted the truth: his daughter's illness, the hospital bills, Amara's help. The officer listened, her pen moving quickly. When she turned to Marcus, his charm was gone, replaced by a nervous stammer. It's not what it looks like, he said, but the words fell flat. Lila watched it all, her mind racing. The camera had exposed Marcus's lies, but it had also exposed something bigger: the way people like him assumed the worst of people like Jamal, like her. It wasn't just about layoffs or secrets. It was about power, about who got to tell the story and who got silenced. As the police led Marcus away for questioning, the crowd's whispers followed him out the door. "He's done," someone said. "Vale Tech is finished," another added. Lila didn't care about the company. She cared about Jamal's daughter, about Amara's courage, about the truth finally being seen. The officer turned to Lila, her expression softening. "You're the one who spotted the camera, huh?" Lila nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yeah." The officer smiled. "You did good, kid." For the first time in a long time, Lila felt seen. And it felt like the beginning of something new. The police lights flashed outside La Belle Etoile, casting red and blue streaks across the wet pavement. Inside, the kitchen was quieter now, the crowd gone, leaving only Amara, Jamal, Lila, and a few officers wrapping up their notes. Marcus had been taken to the station, his protests fading into the night. The camera, now in an evidence bag, sat on the counter like a silent judge. Lila stood near the back door, her backpack slung over one shoulder, watching the officers with wary eyes. She'd seen too many uniforms in her life: social workers, cops, foster parents who thought rules were enough to fix a broken world. But tonight felt different. Tonight, she'd made a difference. Amara sat on a stool, her emerald gown crumpled, her face weary but resolute. She looked at Jamal, who leaned against the counter, his hands no longer raised in surrender but folded tightly, as if holding himself together. "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice thick with emotion. "I should have told Marcus about helping you. Maybe none of this would have happened." Jamal shook his head, his eyes distant. "Ain't your fault. He was looking for a reason to see me as the bad guy. Always was." Lila's chest ached. She knew that look in Jamal's eyes, the exhaustion of being judged, of carrying a weight you didn't choose. She'd felt it in foster homes, in schools, in the way people's eyes slid past her like she was nothing. The officer, a woman named Detective Ruiz, finished her notes and approached them. "Mr. Harris, we'll need you to come to the station for a full statement. Ms. Jones, you too." Her eyes softened as they landed on Lila. "And you, kid, you're a witness. You got a guardian we can call." Lila's stomach dropped. Her foster mom, Ms. Clara, was probably asleep by now, unaware Lila had slipped out to scavenge food. I'll be okay," she mumbled, avoiding the detective's gaze. Amara's hand found hers, warm and steady. "She's with me for now," she said firmly. "I'll make sure she gets home safe." Detective Ruiz nodded, though her eyes lingered on Lila, as if sensing the weight of her story. "All right. Let's move." Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and sharp. The alley was empty now. The crowd dispersed, their videos already spreading across social media. Lila could imagine the headlines: Tech mogul's scandal exposed by child's discovery. She didn't care about the fame, though. She cared about Jamal's daughter, Tasha, who might get her treatment now. She cared about Amara, who'd stood up to Marcus despite everything. As they walked to the police car, Jamal's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face softening. "It's the hospital," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're moving Tasha to a better ward. Someone saw the videos, started a fundraiser." Amara's eyes filled with tears, a smile breaking through. "That's incredible, Jamal." Lila's heart lifted, but she stayed quiet, her eyes on the ground. She wasn't used to good news. It felt fragile, like it could shatter any second. At the station, the air was sterile, the fluorescent lights harsh. Lila sat in a plastic chair, swinging her legs, while Amara and Jamal gave their statements. Detective Ruiz knelt beside her, her voice gentle. "You did something big tonight, Lila. That camera you spotting it changed everything." Lila shrugged, her cheeks warm. "I just saw it blinking." Ruiz smiled. "Sometimes that's all it takes. Seeing what no one else does." The hours stretched on, the station buzzing with activity. Marcus's lawyers arrived, their suits crisp, their voices loud. But the footage was undeniable, and the public was already tearing him apart online. Vailteca's stock was plummeting, and whispers of lawsuits were spreading. Amara sat beside Lila, her hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "You're not invisible. You know," she said softly. "Not to me." Lila's throat tightened, but she didn't cry. She nodded, her small hands clutching her backpack. For the first time, she felt like she belonged somewhere, even if it was just this moment. As dawn broke, painting the sky in streaks of pink, Detective Ruiz returned with news. The footage is being reviewed by the DA. Vail's in deep trouble, possible fraud, intimidation, maybe more. She looked at Jamal. "And the fundraiser for your daughter. It's already hit 50 grand. Jamal's eyes glistened, his voice breaking. That's gonna save her." Lila smiled, small but real. The truth had won, for once. But she knew the world wasn't fixed. Not yet. The morning sun filtered through the station's windows, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. Lila sat quietly, her backpack at her feet, watching as Amara and Jamal signed their final statements. The air was lighter now, the weight of the night's chaos lifting with every passing minute. Outside, Chicago was waking up, oblivious to the storm that had broken in that alley. Detective Ruiz approached, her notepad tucked away. "You're all free to go," she said, her eyes lingering on Lila. "Kid, you need a ride home." Lila hesitated, her fingers tracing the frayed strap of her backpack. Home was a foster house that never felt like hers, a place where she was just another mouth to feed. But Amara spoke before she could answer. "I'll take her," she said, her voice firm. "She's not alone today." Jamal nodded, his tired face breaking into a small smile. "You're a good one, Amara. And you, Lalairi, something special." Lila's cheeks warmed, but she looked away, unused to praise. She didn't know what to do with it, how to hold it without it slipping through her fingers. As they stepped outside, the city buzzed with life cars honking, pedestrians rushing, the skyline gleaming under the morning light. The alley was just a block away, but it felt like a lifetime ago. The wooden plank with its bold yellow text, "Truth Sees All," was probably still there, leaning against the dumpster, a quiet reminder of the night that changed everything. Amara's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, her face tightening. "It's Marcus," she said, her voice flat. "He's out on bail. Already spinning some story about being misunderstood." Jamal's jaw clenched, but he shook his head. "Let him spin. The truth's out now. People know." Lila's eyes narrowed. She didn't trust Marcus's world, the one where money and charm could rewrite reality. But she trusted the camera, the footage, the way it had stripped him bare. She trusted Amara's strength, Jamal's resilience. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to trust herself. They walked to Amara's car, a modest sedan parked under a streetlight. Lila climbed into the back, her small frame sinking into the seat. Amara glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You hungry?" she asked. Lila nodded, her stomach rumbling at the thought. She hadn't eaten since the scraps she'd scavenged at the gala. They stopped at a diner, the kind with sticky tables and waitresses who called you Han. Over pancakes and coffee, Amara and Jamal talked about Tasha, about the fundraiser that was still growing, about the hospital's promise to prioritize her treatment. Lila listened, her fork pausing mid-bite. She didn't know Tasha, but she felt connected to Hera, girl fighting to be seen, to be saved. Amara reached across the table, her hand brushing Lila's. "You know, you could come with me to visit Tasha sometime. I think she'd like you." Lila's eyes widened, her heart skipping. "Me?" "Yeah, you," Amara said, her smile warm. "You're brave, Lila. And you've got a good heart. The world needs more of that." Jamal nodded, his voice soft. "You gave me hope last night, kid. For Tasha. For me." Lila looked down, her throat tight. She wasn't used to matching, to being more than a shadow. But last night, she'd been the spark that lit the truth ablaze. And now, sitting in this diner, with Amara and Jamal treating her like family, she felt something new: hope. Fragile but real. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Marcus's empire crumbled as more whistleblowers came forward, emboldened by the footage. Vailtech faced lawsuits, investigations, and a plummeting stock price. Amara ended her engagement, her ring left on Marcus's desk with a note: "The truth sees all." Lila went back to her foster home, but it wasn't the same. Amara visited often, bringing books, clothes, and stories about Tasha's recovery. Jamal sent her a thank you note, signed with a small heart from Tasha. And slowly, Lila started to believe she wasn't invisible. The city didn't change overnight. Prejudice still lingered, in whispers and glances, in the systems that crushed people like Jamal and Lila. But that night in the alley, with a camera's unblinking eye and a girl's quiet courage, had cracked something open. The truth wasn't just a weapon, it was a light, shining on the shadows, showing the world what it could be. And Lila, the girl who'd whispered, "There's a camera," knew she'd never be silent again.